I've had the DJI Pocket 2 for over 10 months now, and I've shot a lot with it. Honestly, I love this little fella and the quality that you get out of it. In this video, I'm gonna give you the best settings, not just to shoot right with it, but to shoot cinematic content that can go head to head with any camera there. But just as you need a rocket to go to the moon, there are certain accessories that you need in order to get the best out of the DJI Pocket 2. And I have an extensive video that I go in fine detail through all of them. But if there is one accessory that you must have about anything else, it's ND filters. These little bits of glass, honestly, they are a must-have in every camera bag. And secondly, in the Mimo app, you need to stop shooting on auto if you do that and turn on the pro features. Because honestly, shooting in auto is the biggest signal of someone that doesn't have a clue of what he's doing. The Pocket 2 gives you the option to shoot at 1080p, 2.7K and 4K. Trust me, you want 4K. Forget about any HDR at 27K or HD at 1080p. You want 4K. And this is not just because it's the highest possible resolution you can get, it's because it gives you a lot of flexibility in post. You could, for instance, turn a boring static shot into an interesting tracking or track out shot simply by digitally zooming in or zooming out. This is the kind of functionality that you want from a camera because it gives you a lot of flexibility in the type of editing that you can create. Now, in terms of frame rates, 24 is the default and standard frame rate for all things looking cinematic. The Pocket 2 gives you the option to go from 24 all the way up to 60, and myself, I set my camera at 25 frames per second because having that extra frame rate compared to 24 makes the footage look a little bit smoother and less jerky and jumpy. But this is entirely up to you, and you need to experiment and find out what it is that works for you. Now, what's really great about the Pocket 2 is that it gives you the ability to set the camera at 4K 30 or 60 frames per second. And this is really good if you slow it down in post because it helps smoothing out any issues with the stabilization. Now, if you have people in the frame, it's a decision that you need to make as to whether you are okay with people moving at slow motion or whether you need those people to move at normal pace. But if you want some really nice and smooth shots without compromising on quality, just set the camera at 4K 60 frames per second and then slow it down in post, which is really easy to do, and your shots will look absolutely amazing. Now, if you want it even slower, you can set the Pocket 2 to 120 frames per second through the Mimo app or 240 frames per second through the Pocket 2 itself. You can't do 240 through the Mimo app. Now, what you need to understand is that you'll drop from 4K to 1080p in terms of resolution, so everything will look softer. So in my opinion, slow-mo is for close-ups only. Never set the camera on auto. It's the quickest way to spot amateur footage and someone that doesn't have a clue what he's doing. If, for instance, you have a bright daylight today and you have the camera set on auto, the camera will try to adjust digitally and automatically for that brightness level. And sometimes no amount of adjustment is enough because it's just simply too bright and your image will clip or be too hot. And not only that, but the higher the shutter speed the camera needs to adjust to, the choppier and more unnatural the footage will look. And this is where ND filters come in handy because it's the only way to expose correctly whatever the brightness levels around you. Now, over the years, our eyes have been trained to expect certain motion blur, and the only way to get this is using ND filters and correctly expose manually and not in auto. This is why NDs are one of the most, if not the most essential accessory for the Pocket 2, and the first thing that I would personally recommend that you buy. Because when you use NDs to correctly expose your images, you'll be able to set the shutter speed at double your frame rate, which is what you want to do. So if you're on 24 or 25 frames per second, you will set the shutter speed at 50, and then you try to adjust the ISO or set the ISO as low as possible, in the region of 100 or 200. Because exposure is locked in these cameras and you can't do anything about it. And the only adjustments that you can do is the shutter speed and the ISO. And one thing that will help you massively to know that you are correctly exposing an image is the histogram. And I strongly recommend that you turn it on and have it on at all times. And you want to make sure that neither end, neither the right or the left, is peaking. Because if it peaks to the right, it means that the whites are pure white. You can't recover that information. It's just too bright. And if it's peaking to the left, it means that the dark areas or the blacks are pure black. You cannot recover that information in post. So when you go into the grade, those areas will be either white or black with no information whatsoever. Ideally, you want to have something that resembles a triangle in the middle, but that's just going to be impossible because every environment and situation is different. You just want to make sure that neither end is peaking. And if you do that, you're most likely to get really good footage. Now, these are like sunglasses to your Pocket 2. And as you can clearly see, I'm correctly exposed, my shutter speed is double my frame rate, and I'm an ISO 100. But if I remove the ND filter, look what happens to the image. It's all blown out. It's way too hot. If I was to go on auto, look how overexposed everything is. The camera just can't auto expose for it because it's simply too bright. But look what happens if I put the ND filter back on. Everything now is correctly exposed and the camera has adjusted to it. And if I go back to manual, see what happens when I go to manual. Everything becomes correctly exposed and the right way to do it. So yeah, NDs are massively important and it's the only way to get images correctly exposed. If you want a wider field of view than the 20mm that the Pocket 2 comes with, you're going to have to get yourself a wide-angle lens adapter. Now, DJI has a really good one with a Creators Combo, which I highly recommend anyone to buy, but you cannot attach ND filters to it. If you want to attach ND filters to it comfortably, you need to get yourself the Freewell wide-angle lens that comes with ND filters, and it's a really good quality. Honestly, the images are fantastic. In post, you're going to have to compensate for the lens barrel distortion, but once you do the adjustments, the images look absolutely amazing. And the same principles apply than the normal lens. You need to manually adjust the shutter speed and the ISO, and the only way to do it is by using ND filters. But trust me, the images look amazing. Now, in terms of color space, you want to make sure that you set it to D-Cine and not normal. When you set the color space to normal, your images will look very contrasty and very saturated, and a lot of information gets baked into the video signal, and there is nothing you can do. It's really difficult to recover in post. If you set it to D-Cine, it's a relatively flat color space, but the camera is capturing as much of the dynamic range as it has, and then in post-production it's really easy to color correct it and make it look amazing. Make sure that you record good sound, because people will watch something that is being shot all right but has really good sound, but they'll turn away quicker than you say hello from something that was shot really nice but has bad sound. With the Creators Combo, you get a really nice wireless microphone and the do-it-all handle, which is a fantastic combo of wireless microphone. And on top of that, you can attach an additional lapel mic or a shotgun microphone or any other type of microphone. The important thing is that you need to have good sound. It will be the difference between people watching and not watching your video. One of the main reasons why you want your exposure locked manually and not in auto is just so that it doesn't change halfway through your shot, which is what would happen if you set it on auto. And the same applies to the white balance. You don't want it to swing halfway through your shot, which is what would happen if you leave it on auto. Now, every time you change locations or time of day, you need to adjust the white balance. And the easiest way to do, rather than try to guess whether you're on a cloudy or indoors or sunny day, is leave it on auto, and then once you get the right reading, lock it. And that way you make sure that the white balance doesn't swing or change halfway through your shot, and it's always correctly set. Now in terms of focus, the Pocket 2 gives you the option to do either manual or auto. Now manual, it's good for talking heads so that you can lock the focus in a certain plane, and whether you move back and forth or sideways, it stays there. But the risk of things going wrong because you move too close or too far away is much greater than if you leave it on auto and forget about it. Now if you're doing review shots from behind a wall or a pillar, the Pocket 2's autofocus, it hands too quick and the movement is too sudden, too abrupt. I recommend that you set your focus manually to the end point where you want the focus to end. If you lock your focus to where you want it to end and then you do the movement, you don't need to worry about any focus hunting, and at least the end point will look really nice. One final point that I'd like to talk about is about camera movement. This is not a setting per se, but adding camera movement to your shots will make a massive difference to the overall quality of your videos. Now the Pocket 2 is an amazing camera and a gimbal all into one. You have 3 modes: FPV, tilt lock and follow. Most people will use follow and tilt lock simply because are the easier ones. FPV is a bit more for the advanced user, but they're there for a reason. Use them. It's going to transform the quality of your videos, and it's so easy to do. If you want to get some inspiration about the type of shots that you can achieve with the Pocket 2, I've got a video appearing just about here. We'll show you 10 cool and unique shots. It's well worth watching. If you want to get additional tips and hacks and things that will transform your filming with the Pocket 2, I've got another video appearing just about here, that even though it was shot for smartphones, the same principles apply for the Pocket 2. And with that being said, I'll see you in the next video.